Hi everyone, a very Merry Christmas Eve to you. Can you believe it's already Christmas Eve? It's been quite an eventful couple of days with this weird weather and snow and ice, and it's all very exciting. And I bet you are anxious about what might happen over this night. Perhaps some presents might appear. I want to talk to you a little bit about why we talk about presents on Christmas. It is part of our tradition to give gifts, and we do that partly because the wise men in our story of Jesus' birth gave gifts to people. But there's also kind of a little funny thing that is about the word presents, because presents can mean two different things. It can mean the gifts you get, or it can mean your very self being with other people, your presence in a room. If somebody calls your name on the roll and you say present, that's what that's about. It's being aware of where you are right now. I want to read to you a story tonight, and it's a story that's based off of the book that we've been using in church, A Christmas Carol. This one is called The Animals' Christmas Carol, and it's a little different. In the story we've been reading, there are 3 ghosts who visit our main character, Scrooge. In this one, there's only one, and also he's a goat. But it's still a great story about presents and presents. It was the day before Christmas, and the merry old town was never merrier. Silver bells hung from every shop window. Happy holiday shoppers greeted one another warmly. The smell of Christmas trees and hot cider filled the air. The only one not happy at Christmas time, or at any other time for that matter, was Ebenezer Scrooge. The grouchy old goat was never known to wish anyone well or put a coin in a beggar's cup, which was a way that you might give someone help. "Christmas! Bah! Humbug!" he shouted at the carolers who were singing in front of his office. Ebenezer Scrooge cared for only one thing: money. Although he was rich, Scrooge was too stingy to spend 1 penny more than he had to on fuel, and so he kept his office as cold as his own heart. Bob Cratchit, Scrooge's clerk, sat shivering at his desk. He tried to warm his hands by the flame of his candle. Poor Bob worked long hours for very little pay, even on Christmas Eve. The clock on the wall finally struck 7. The workday was over. Bob Cratchit put down his pen, blew out his candle, and walked over to Mr. Scrooge's desk. "Sir," he said timidly, "tomorrow is Christmas Day, and I would like to spend it with my family." Old Scrooge hated the word spend. "Bah! Christmas! It's just an excuse for you to pick my pockets," he snapped. "Take the day off if you must, but be at work extra early the next morning." "Thank you, sir," Bob said happily, "and Merry Christmas." He left quickly before Scrooge could change his mind. Bob Cratchit's sons, Peter and Tiny Tim, were waiting outside for him. Tim could not walk, so Bob hoisted the youngster onto his shoulders. They hurried home, stopping only long enough for a slide on the ice and a peek in the toy shop window. Of all the wonderful toys Tiny Tim saw, there was only one thing he really wanted: a pair of shiny silver skates. "Next year my legs will be strong, Papa," said Tiny Tim. "Then I'll be able to skate with Peter and my friends." "Perhaps," said his father, brushing a tear from his eye. At home, the three were hugged and welcomed by the rest of the Cratchit family, while Ebenezer Scrooge went home all alone to his dark, empty house. Later that night, as Scrooge sat in bed counting his piles of money, a strange thing happened. The bedroom window suddenly swung open, and in flew a snowy white bear holding a golden wand. He was dressed all in red, and he wore a bright green holly wreath around his head. Old Scrooge thought he was being robbed. He held tight to the purse around his neck. Who are you?" he asked. "What do you want?" "I am the spirit of Christmas, Ebenezer," said the jolly bear, "and I'm here to help you put the joy of Christmas back into your heart." Before Scrooge had a chance to object, the spirit of Christmas took him by the hand and waved his wand. Suddenly they were flying out the bedroom window and over the town. The look of surprise on Ebenezer's face made the bear laugh. Below them, everyone, both rich and poor, was bustling in and out of the shops, happily calling "Merry Christmas" to friends and strangers alike. "Look down, Ebenezer," said the spirit. "What do you see?" "I see time and money being wasted," grumbled Scrooge. "Christmas is nothing but a humbug." The bear shook his head. "This job is going to be harder than I thought," he said. The spirit of Christmas reached inside his robe and took out a clock. Its hands were spinning backward. "We're going back in time to another Christmas," the bear announced. "Close your eyes and hold on tight." Poof! Scrooge opened his eyes and looked down. He saw a laughing little goat pulling a gleaming new sled. "That's me," he shouted, "and my sister, Fan." The bear smiled. "You looked very happy, Ebenezer," he said. "Oh, yes," Scrooge replied. "I really wanted that sled for Christmas. Fan helped me write a letter to Santa. She said I was the best sled puller in town." Moving ahead in time, Scrooge next saw himself as a young clerk working at his job. "Isn't that Mr. Fezziwig, your boss?" asked the spirit of Christmas. "Yes," cried Scrooge, "and a kinder soul never lived. Every Christmas Mr. Fezziwig gave a party. He made everyone stop work and join in the fun." "Those parties must have cost him a pretty penny," said the spirit, shaking his head. "Wasn't that a waste of time and money?" Scrooge didn't answer, but the spirit of Christmas knew he was thinking about his own clerk, Bob Cratchit. The bear waved his wand again, and poof! They were returned to the present. Now Scrooge and the spirit stood in front of the Cratchits' humble home. They looked through the wall as if it weren't there. Bob Cratchit and his family were sitting around a small, cozy fire singing Christmas carols. "They seem so happy," said Scrooge softly. "They are," replied the bear. "No thanks to your stinginess. Bob could use a raise in pay, you know. It's a wonder he can keep food on the table with the pitiful salary you give him." When the singing was done, Bob lifted his glass in a toast. "A Merry Christmas to all, he said, "and especially Mr. Scrooge."
"And God bless us, everyone,"
added Tiny Tim in a very tiny voice. Ebenezer Scrooge looked at the sick little boy, and he was truly sorry for the way he had treated Bob and so many others. "Please tell me Christmas isn't over," he begged the spirit. "Before I thought only of myself, but now I have the Christmas spirit, and I want to share it with everyone." The spirit of Christmas said nothing, but there was a twinkle in his eye. He waved his wand once more, and they were flying home. Scrooge looked down and saw that the shops in town were open, and people were running to and fro with their bundles. "It's still Christmas Eve," he said, pulling at the bear's hand. "Hurry, spirit, I need your help. I've got lots of shopping to do." Old Scrooge had never felt younger. The spirit of Christmas followed him as he raced from store to store, buying one Christmas gift after another. Scrooge bought a new coat and a scarf for Bob Cratchit, a bonnet for Mrs. Cratchit, and mountains of toys for the Cratchit children. He also bought a special present for his new friend. Look at that little hat. "Just what I needed," the bear smiled. "But you shouldn't have." Scrooge stopped to shake hands with all the shopkeepers and shoppers, wishing each one a Merry Christmas. He reached into his purse and gave the children shiny new coins. The townspeople stared in surprise and whispered to one another, "Was this really Ebenezer Scrooge?" Quicker than a jingle, the spirit of Christmas brought Ebenezer and his packages safely home. "You no longer need my help," said the bear. "You now have the true meaning of Christmas in your heart. Keep it with you always, or I may visit you again." Then, with one last wave of his wand, the spirit flew off into the snowy night. I will," called Scrooge. "Thank you, spirit, and Merry Christmas." Early the next day, Christmas Day, Ebenezer Scrooge knocked on the Cratchits' front door. "Merry Christmas, Bob," Scrooge said shyly when his clerk opened the door. "And a Happy New Year, too." Bob Cratchit could not believe his eyes or his ears. Merry Christmas, sir," he stammered. "Would you like to join us for Christmas dinner?" "I'd love to," Scrooge said delightedly. It was the most glorious day Scrooge had ever known. There were songs and games and dancing and the most delicious dinner he had ever tasted. But what made Ebenezer happiest of all was the look on Tiny Tim's face when he opened one of his presents and found a pair of shiny silver skates. From that day forward, Scrooge did all he could to help the Cratchits. He became a better boss to Bob, a second father to Tiny Tim, and he found a doctor who made Tim healthy and strong. In return, Scrooge gained a family that loved him for who he was, a gruff old goat with a heart of gold. Good old Ebenezer Scrooge kept Christmas in his heart every day, and he never said, "Bah, humbug," again. I hope you like the story. I love the way he shows his presence, his willingness to be there and be with the Cratchits and care for them with the presents that he gives them. But what is most important is the love that they share and the love that they give each other for the rest of their lives. So that is my wish for you. I hope you get everything you ever wanted, but especially love. You certainly have it from me, and I know you have it from God. Merry Christmas.